Hey guys, what's up? It's finally time for me to do a tier list on the 3DS. Today I'll be ranking on this tier list every single 3DS JRPG released in North America. Okay, we have 70 plus games to cover. Holy, yeah, if you thought the 3DS didn't have any JRPGs, you were wrong. And we're gonna start straight away with a hidden gem, an obscure game called 7th Dragon 3. Code BFD. This is part of a series that never came out of Japan. In fact, this is the only one in the entire series that's ever come out of Japan. This is a turn-based RPG, and in here you basically create a bunch of parties of generic-looking characters. Not a lot of customization there's barely any customization. It actually works like a dungeon crawler in first person, except it's not. It is a dungeon crawler, but in third person, kind of like in top-down view, where you move around with your character and then get into battles and in a turn-based order, except, later in the game you can start switching between parties to attack your enemies, and then for the big bosses this is really helpful, and it gives you the idea that this is some kind of quest-driven RPG, and it actually kinda is, but at the same time it's also story-driven, which means there's a lot of story, a lot of dialogue, not a lot of dialogue, no, nothing of the sort. It's a pretty balanced gameplay and dialogue, and you like this game. It's no big deal, it's no masterpiece, not one of the best on the 3DS unfortunately, but it is a pretty interesting hidden gem, and since it's actually kind of a prequel to the entire series, you don't need to play the other ones to understand this one. 7th Dragon, you know what, it's not that great, but it is kind of great, so I'm gonna give it a B. And okay, moving on to the Bravely games, you already know them, some of the most popular JRPGs on the system, still exclusive to it. The first one, I tried to get into it, I liked it at first, and I played for like 6 to 7 hours, and then I quit, I gave up, not because the game was hard, but because it was kind of boring for me personally. I don't know, it's a love letter to the classics and all that stuff, and I respect that, but Bravely Default just didn't do it for me. Out of respect and out of what it achieved and because of the graphics and what it was trying to do, I'm gonna give it a B, but I'm not really a fan of this game. And to be completely honest, because I didn't become a fan of this game, I never played the sequel Bravely Second. So Bravely Second, okay, I'm just gonna give it a B out of, sheer ignorance. Code of Princess. Code of Princess is an action RPG. It's a bit of a beat 'em up, and it's actually made by some of the people who worked on Guardian Heroes. Pretty popular beat-em-up game back in the day on the Sega Saturn. Today it's a forgotten gem. But anyway, the battle mechanics are pretty similar. You still move around in 2D in layers, and you actually need to move up and down and so wield the enemies, and you actually need to do this because if the enemies move to a different layer, you can't attack them. You need to move to their layer. It sounds complicated, but no, it's just a simple regular beat-em-up with a twist. And the story is extremely silly, it's a dumb game, don't take this seriously. The main character is extremely sexualized, in fact she's one of the most sexualized JRPG female characters I've seen in my entire life. But she's a lot of fun. I mean, she's dumb, she makes you laugh, so is the rest of the characters. You're not gonna play the story, you're not gonna play this game for the story, you're gonna play for the gameplay and probably the sexiness in there. The RPG elements are there, but they don't feel as strong as in other action RPGs, so don't expect to be a fulfilling, true, complete traditional role-playing game. It's just not. It's an action RPG, an RPG beat-em up if you wanna call it that way, with tons of characters to play and tons of fun. However, the best version of this game in terms of gameplay mechanics is apparently the Switch version, but the Switch version, well, so is this one. Both are kind of rare and expensive nowadays. So yeah, if you can find a way to emulate this game, hopefully you can. If you don't, then prepare to spend a lot of money, I guess. Code of Princess is a B. Conception 2, actually. You don't need to play the first one to understand this one. Standalone stories. This is another hidden gem. This game got a lot of trash. A lot of people hate this game. They thought it was one of those Idea Factory compiled hard games, and guess what? It's not. This is published by Atlus, and it's actually developed by Spike Chunsoft. And Atlus, right? Yeah. But it's a pretty good game. I think the battle system is extremely unique and original. You basically control your character, your main character, your MC, with one of his, this is a harem. It's a fan service game. I don't want to waste your time with the story. Another game you won't play for the story. You're gonna play this for the fan service and because of the combat. So it's a bit of a dungeon crawler. You go around dungeons, and small dungeons, actually they aren't that long. You go in floors, and then but the battle system is the star in this game. Here you actually control your character like I mentioned, and then one of his girls, one of his heroines. And you're supposed to... I'm gonna get demonetized for this. Hopefully not. You make babies, okay, with the girls, but you don't make them in the traditional way. You kind of put your souls together in these tubes that you're seeing right now. And it's just freaking weird. Don't let me explain that, guys. Don't ask me. It's just the way this game is, and that's the reason why it got a lot of trash. But I think it's a good game, I insist. In these battle mechanics, it's basically a turn-based RPG, but there's a couple of enemies in the field. You surround these enemies with your whole party, your hero and the girl. They are pretty much one unit, and then the kids, which are basically 3 kids, each takes their turn to attack their enemies, and then the enemy, and so on. But the fact that you can move around and switch between enemies and surround a different enemy, I don't know, I thought that was pretty unique and original, you know. It's not like fantastic JRPG, super recommended, no. But it's a B. In fact, you've probably noticed there is no E tier, because I don't think there's a single game in this list that is actually super bad, extremely garbage, nothing like that. Anyway, moving on to Crimson Shroud, that's another really obscure game. Crimson Shroud, for those who don't know, it's extremely obscure. This might take the cake, man. This might be the most obscure game on the system. No physical release, this is only digital, and this is developed by Level 5. It's one of the most boring RPGs I played in my life. When I first played this, I thought it was very original because you... Just look at the art style right now. You have these steel characters, they kind of look like chessboard pieces, okay? And they are steel, there's no animation whatsoever for the characters themselves, and you basically control these kind of like a mercenary, and you meet other characters, they join your party and blah blah blah, the usual stuff. But the story is really freaking dark here and pretty interesting, pretty mature actually. That's the one thing that I liked, and I thought its ideas were original, but sometimes original doesn't mean fun. Doesn't necessarily mean fun. It does for a lot of original games, not for this one. Eventually I got really bored. It's a turn-based RPG, and you have your skills, and I don't even remember because I ditched this game a long time ago. It is not really... It's not a bad game, but it's not good either. I think this is one of the worst JRPGs Level 5 has ever developed. So, yeah, guys... I know this is a game that I included in my Hidden Gems video on the 3DS many years ago, and I kind of regret it. It's not bad, like I said, but it's not good either. I'm gonna give it a D. Yeah. Concept Revolt. Alright, Concept Revolt is part of the Concept series. There's one on the 360, which is a bit of a strategy RPG, but they aren't your average strategy RPGs, both of these games. They're more about a board game, kind of like a board game that you go around, you know, with your characters, and then you have these cards that control the battlefield. You can use them to make a buff, or to summon an enemy, or to occupy a terrain, or to make a terrain, and so on. There's a lot of variety on what these cards can do. You can pretty much say these are card-based RPGs. Well, they're RPGs because there's a story, and it's a story-driven game. There's character development, characters level up, your cards level up. However, your missions will be taking place in these boards, and some of them can be quickly done in like 10 minutes or probably less, 5 minutes. Others will take up to an hour. So it can be a pretty exhausting game, and because of that, it's pretty unbalanced. It's not for everybody, let's leave it at that. I think it's pretty good. Some of the battles can be pretty addictive, but others can just drag on forever. I think this game could have used a little bit more testing and more balance in its gameplay mechanics. I'm not talking about the difficulty. It's a fairly difficult game, but nothing too tough. But balance, I mean that I don't think the maps should have taken that long sometimes. This is still a good game, so I'm gonna give it a C. Now, Devil Survivor 1 and 2, these are ports of the original games that came out on the Nintendo DS with additional content, the definitive versions to play of these games, so these are masterpieces, both of them, so straight to DS. I've covered these games to death, so no need for me to talk about them right now. Moving on to another hidden gem, this is Dragon Ball Fusions. Not a lot of people know about this game. Sure, people know about the fighting games based on Dragon Ball or some of the adventure games. This is an action, well, kind of like a weird mix between turn-based and action. to be completely honest, I couldn't get into it. I'm a fan of Dragon Ball. I've been a fan my whole freaking life. I grew up watching Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, and this is a game where the whole point is to fuse everybody here, everybody you can imagine, make weird-ass fusions and fight it out, select teams, build up teams, and they level up the more the story advances. And it's not a traditional style RPG. You're not gonna control one character and go town to town and now with an overworld and all that jazz. No, that's not gonna happen. But anyway, you get the idea, it's battle after battle. So some people will say it's not actually an RPG, but I think it is. Give it a try if you can. It's a good game, it's a fun time, but it's honestly, it gets old really quickly. So this is another C. Now, Dragon Quest VII and Dragon Quest VIII. Obviously, you already know 7 is a remake, a full remake of the original game that came out on the PS1 several years ago. In my opinion, this is the best version to play of this game. I wish this could have been made on the Switch. It would have made a lot more money, in my opinion, but okay, the 3DS, it found its home and it's amazing. So I prefer this version over the original, so I'm gonna give this one a B. And then Dragon Quest VIII, I actually, even though this has more content, it's not a remake, this is simply a remaster with additional content and 2 more playable characters. Even though it's pretty much the definitive version, I kinda prefer the the PS2, and because the game is so freaking beautiful, you admire that beauty much better on a big freaking screen than on the Nintendo 3DS small screen. So yeah, I'm gonna give this one a B too. I'm glad it got a port on the 3DS, but I think the PS2 version is the one to go. And this is very expensive nowadays, holy shit. Anyway, we got a lot of Etrian Odyssey games here, guys. We're gonna start with a little spin-off called Etrian Mystery Dungeon, because Etrian Odyssey, developed by Atlus, originally there are a bunch of dungeon crawlers in first person where you create a bunch of generic characters, barely any story, you just move in areas, you complete the areas and so on. I'm honestly not a fan. I tried one on the Nintendo DS, I tried the remake, which I'm ranking today. There's 2 remakes of the first 2 games originally released on the Nintendo DS, and then there's Etrian Odyssey 4, 5, and Nexus, and this little spin-off. So Mystery Dungeon, it is what it is. You probably know the Mystery Dungeon series. There's some Pokemon games we'll see today, and there's Shiren the Wanderer. You basically explore areas with a party, and they're randomly generated areas. And you know the drill, those games are okay for a while, but I've never found them really that interesting. I've never finished a single roguelike mystery dungeon type of game in my entire life. So this is a C. Not a fan. If it's a masterpiece to you, make your own tier list. And you know what, I'm just gonna give a C to the rest of the series because I don't think they're bad games. I think they're actually pretty good. I mean, there's a good reason why there's a lot of games on the DS and the 3DS, and there's an upcoming remaster of the first 3 games for the Switch. So it's a big series, right? It's very successful in Japan. So out of respect, I'm not gonna put them on the D because I just don't like this game. I tried a bunch of them, couldn't get into them, but I'm just gonna give them a C to all of them. If you're a big fan, again, make your own tier list. So yeah. And by the way, some of these are really expensive, guys. Yeah, alright. Hack your 3DS and download them, because paying money for these games at that price. Anyway, oh man, Ever Oasis. Ever Oasis is a game that I played a long time ago and never finished. And I actually recently came back last week to try to and put as many hours as I could for this precise video. And I'm having a blast, guys. This is no masterpiece because I know a lot of people won't be able to get into it. Basically, this is an action RPG developed by the same guy, the creator of the Mana series. So because the Mana series kinda died for a while during this era, this guy couldn't get the rights, quit the company, and then created pretty much his own studio to work on this game. And it is a love letter, it's a spiritual successor to the Mana series, but it plays differently. Here you are pretty much managing, that's right, managing an oasis. The world has gone to hell. There's chaos all over the place and it's killed everything, so you could say it's a bit of a post-apocalyptic setting, actually. Never thought about that because this is a game for kids. The story, the humor, everything is chibi and cute and whatnot. It's a game for kids and it's easy to understand and easy to get into. The game holds your hand, it gives you detailed explanations and concrete explanations for everything. you won't have any trouble getting into this game. It's pretty basic, but there's a lot to do. It's one of those games, I promise I'll tell you all about it. I'm planning on finishing this game and include it in one of my 5 RPGs I need to talk about, because I'm really excited, I'm loving this game, I'm gonna give this one an A. Moving on to Fantasy Life, which is kind of similar actually. Fantasy Life is also developed by Level 5, and it was their attempt at some kind of Story of Seasons, Harvest Moon style of game, but without the farming. This is a job simulator, believe it or not. At the beginning of the game, you get a set of jobs and you can choose which job your character will do, and you pretty much simulate life, fantasy life, hence the name of the game, with that character. So it's actually pretty fun. It's a pretty fun game. It can get addictive sometimes, but it's not exactly an open world per se. I don't see it that way, even though it kinda is. So it gets old quickly. I like more Ever Oasis because there's a story in there. There's a linear plot. It also lets you. It's a very quest-driven game, Ever Oasis, but it's basically a job simulator RPG. But anyway, it's a great game. I'm gonna give it a B. Final Fantasy Explorers, to be completely honest, I tried it for a little bit, so take my opinion with a grain of salt. I couldn't get into it. Maybe if I go back and really try, I'll end up enjoying it and loving it. But it was like, man, I'm gonna give this one a C. I don't think it's a bad game. I think it was a fun idea. But yeah, it's a Final Fantasy game on the 3DS. It's one of those gazillion spin-offs, and I'm just tired of them. Alright, we've arrived at Fire Emblem, my second favorite JRPG series of all time. And the first one I want to rank, well, they're actually not in the correct order here, but Fire Emblem Awakening is the first one that came out. We all know it's the one that saved the series, blah blah blah. It's a great game, fantastic game, no masterpiece, it's kind of overrated in my opinion, but yeah, this is a solid B. And then there's Fire Emblem Fates, which it's the controversial one. There's not exactly 3 games. There's just one game cut into 3 parts, but every part is a different route, right? They just got released separately. And while it's still a good game, and I do recommend it, it's the worst Fire Emblem game in my opinion. All 3 of them, no matter which route you choose, Revelations right here is the worst out of them all. It's the worst Fire Emblem in my opinion, but it's still worth a try. It's a C. And Echoes, that, my man, it's a true Fire Emblem. That is an amazing game, no masterpiece. It's a complete full remake of Fire Emblem Gaiden, originally released on the NES. No, on the Famicom. Never came out of Japan until this remake. And this is a fantastic game I've praised to death in this channel. So this is a solid A. Fossil Fighters Frontiers. Well, there's a series that started on the DS. And they're all kind of inspired by Pokemon. You basically dig up fossils, and then they become dinosaurs, and you train them, and you fight, you enter tournaments and whatnot. But, I don't know, this game is kind of bad, I think the DS games are better. They're okay, but this one, I don't know, it was kind of like... it's not a bad game, but it's a mediocre game. I don't recommend this game, guys. Forget about the entire series, in my opinion. But I don't know, try the ones on the DS just to get an idea. Yeah, this is not recommended. This is a D. Gurumin, the 3D version. This is a port of a game that originally came out on Steam and on the PSP. I've talked about this game a few times before. It's basically an action RPG for kids. You control Perrin, this little girl that goes to live with her grandmother. And in a little town that has a secret, and that secret is that monsters are living there, but only she can see them. Also, maybe something's going on in her head. That's a story for another time, maybe. Gurumin is an action RPG. You fight with Perrin with a drill, and attack monsters and platform in 3D. And the platforming is, like many platformers in 3D, is kind of lame. It's not the best thing, but the fighting is kind of like stiff, It's not the best fighting, it's not the best combat, but it's okay. It's an okay game, and this is a 3D port. Anyway, this is a fun game, but it's nothing special. It's developed by Falcom, believe it or not. But anyway, Falcom RPG for kids. I don't remember if I give it a B on the PSP, but here I'm gonna give it a C. Kingdom Hearts, you guys know me, I'm not a fan of this series at all. I played the first 2 games on the PlayStation 2, and I'm a fan of the second one, and that's it. And I played this one. And like many Kingdom Hearts games, you don't even know what the hell's going on. It's a convoluted mess. The entire series is a meme for good reasons. I don't know, Kingdom Hearts fans will probably enjoy it. I don't care about Kingdom Hearts, so it's a C. Langreaser R, Reincarnation Tensei. It could have been a hidden gem, but it's a mediocre game. It's a mediocre strategy RPG. It's not... I mean, Langreaser, the entire series was developed by the genius of Careersoft. Freaking genius, all of those guys. They went on to create the Growlancer series, and then they merged with Atlus and created Devil Survivor. So how can you top that with a different developer and a different studio for this game? It's not a piece of shit like people make it seem. It's honestly not that bad. It's okay, it's an okay game, but it's just, I mean, it can't be on the C because... I mean, it's just very generic in every area. The story, the combat, it's extremely easy, zero challenge. Forget about this game, guys. It's a D. It's not a terrible game, but it's a D. Moving on to Legend of Legacy. This was before the Alliance Alive, and this is actually some kind of mess up by the developers. But I never saw it that way. It's an okay game. It just gets boring quite quickly because you need to explore every inch of every area with 3 of the, I think there's 8 protagonists you can choose from. You choose 3 and that's your entire party for the rest of the game. And the point of the game is to explore these areas, complete them, but there's a lot of encounters in there. Not exactly random encounters, you can see the enemies, but they're hard to avoid and you get into battles quite often, and the battle system is turn-based. It's a little bit like the Saga games. You don't level up, more like you get random status at the end of each battle and you can play around with the formations with these 3 characters and so on. It's a good game. I understand what the developers were trying to do here and they nailed it with the Alliance Alive. They made up for their mistake with this game, but I don't know, people are too harsh with it. Still, it's not a fun game. I never finished it, and it's just, after 4 or 5 hours it just gets old, man, so I'm gonna give it a C. Little Battlers Experience, man, it's like an action, pretty generic mech action RPG. Not exactly story driven, it's more about the combat and the action, and it kind of inspired by the Super Robot Tyson series, but most of those are strategy RPGs, right? This is an action RPG, and it reminds me a little bit of Custom Robo on the GameCube. Custom Robo is much better. This is still an okay game. It's one of those. It's one of those that are just there on a 3DS. I think it's cheap, so buy it if you see it for dirt cheap to increase your collection. Play it if you want to, if you're curious, but it's nothing extraordinary. It's a C. Lord of Magna, Maiden Heaven. That's another harem. You control this guy who just inherited an inn, a hotel, and he is starting to discover these girls, these mysterious magical idol-like girls in several places in ruins and dungeons and all that jazz, and he recruits them because they all need to find out who they are, who they came from, where they come from. There's this guy chasing them, you know, and wants to kind of like kill them. It's an interesting game, it's an interesting premise. It sounds stupid, silly, and comedic, and it kind of is, but the more you advance, the more you get intrigued, and you root for these girls, and you kind of want to help them find their past and who they are, and how they got their magical powers. And the battle system, man, that's an amazing, extremely addictive battle system. I wish this game could have been longer because you can beat it in less than 20 hours. If you stick to the main story, of course. But basically, it's a strategy RPG. You control the guy and 3 girls. So everybody can attack the enemies, and the whole point of the game is to make these enemies bump into each other so they can all die at the same time, and eventually you can reach the boss and beat the crap out of it. There's multiple bosses, not exactly bosses, more like, you know, the elite monsters in charge of summoning the little ones. And it just gets very addictive. I think the map design is very creative, and the battle mechanics are just as creative. This is an excellent game, strongly recommended. This is an A. Moving on to Machine Knight. Machine Knight, guess what? It's one of those Kemco RPGs, and this is one of the first ones they did, digital only for the Nintendo 3DS. And you know me, Kemco RPGs, 95% of them are very generic. They're okay, turn-based RPGs, inspired by the classics, blah blah blah, generic everything, man, everything. So, I guess if you see it digital for cheap, or if you hack your 3DS, give it a try if you want to. And I'm saying these things about hacking because, as you may already know, the 3DS shop, eShop, is closing down in a few days as of the making of this video. Perhaps by the time you watch this video, it's already been shut down, so Yeah, say goodbye to all those digital games, download it if you can, or hack your console, man. That's what I would do. Machine Knight is a C. It's an okay game, forgettable. Okay, so this is the Mario and Luigi series. First, we've got 2 ports, enhanced ports, kind of remasters if you want to call them that, of the original 2 games that came out on the Nintendo DS. These are great games, actually, pretty fun. They are my cup of tea. I didn't find the battle system that interesting, but they're okay, they're good, and these have some new additions and some new episodes in there. They are the definitive editions. There's a lot of ports and remasters and definitive editions in this tier list video. I mean, in the 3DS library. This is the time where companies started going crazy with remasters and ports and whatnot. I'm gonna give these ones a B, they're pretty solid. Each and every one of them, even the other ones, Paper Jam and the other one, Dream Team, they're pretty solid games and they're okay. I never finished any of these games because I wasn't a fan, but what little I played of each and every single one of them left me pretty satisfied. Maybe I'll go back to one of them one of these days. Maybe they should all be on the Switch in a collection. I don't know, but anyway, yeah, these are good games, guys. These are good games. Let's give them all a B. All the Mario and Luigi games. Not bad games at all. They're a good time. We've got the Mercenary Saga 2 and 3. Where's 1? Well, these 3 games were originally released for phones. So they're ports of phones games, and when you play them, you realize they're phone games. They're pretty generic. When I first played these 2, I was like, man, these are pretty good. They are inspired by Tactics Ogre, about mercenaries, obviously. Each story is standalone. You can start with any of the trilogy. But the problem is that on the 3DS, you can't play the first one. Only 2 and 3 got a port to North America outside of Japan. The first one remained exclusive over there. What the hell? But they made up for that, and they came up with the Switch version, which is the Mercenary Saga trilogy. And that's where it met its success and it became a series. There's a lot of other new mercenaries, whatever, Mercenary Wings, Mercenaries that, on the Switch and PS4 and whatever. Good for the company, I'm happy for them. But they're kind of generic, and these 2 games are okay. You will play them for, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 hours, and then you'll get bored, just like me probably. They're okay, digital only on the 3DS, forget about them. I'd go for the Switch version if I were you. I'm gonna put both of these games on the C. Moko Moko Friends. Well, guys, we may have a winner here. These might just be the worst JRPG on the 3DS. But you know what? It's not terrible. It's a turn-based RPG, extremely colorful, silly, and girly and whatnot. You control this girl and you basically recruit monsters to fight for you. Not exactly like Pokemon, but slightly influenced by that. And you go on quests. There's only one town. You go on quests and you fight enemies, and it's just a bad game. It's not terrible, but I think it's the worst JRPG on the 3DS. This is a D. Yeah. You know what? Land Greaser is much better than Moko Moko Friends. And yeah, Moko means snot in Spanish. Great name for a game. Moving on to the entirety of the Monster Hunter series on the 3DS. Okay, so there's 3, there's 4, there's Generations, and there's Stories. Stories, it's its own thing, and I want to talk about that one in a bit. So, I'm not a fan of Monster Hunter. I didn't try 4, I tried 3, and I tried Generations. Generations was the best of them all, so Generations, I think I'm gonna give it a B. Definitely, the other 2 are a C. I know they were overly successful games and whatever. If you guys are big fans, make your own tier list. These games are not for me, I just can't get into them. Monster Hunter Stories, however, is a turn-based RPG, story-driven, also quest-driven, in which you play as this little kid and you pretty much train monsters. And it's a Monster Hunter game. You go in, some of them you defeat them and then you raise them, you get their eggs and you raise them on town. And blah blah blah. Overall, the battle system is the star here. It's pretty interesting. As you can see, you can attack your enemies and they play these little cool animations like in side-by-side screens. They're pretty cool. And there's a triangle attack system. One attack is stronger than the other and so on. So it's a pretty interesting game. This is a fun game. It's one of my favorite Monster Hunter games, even though it's a spin-off. This is a B. And there's a sequel on the Switch, which is better. Believe it or not, there's a One Piece turn-based RPG. If you thought that new game, Odyssey I think it's called, was the first One Piece RPG, you were wrong. This came before. It's okay, the battle system's kind of interesting, you know, but you gotta be a fan of One Piece. I don't know. I thought by playing this game I will become a fan of the series, but no, it didn't do it for me. So, this is an okay game. One Piece fans might appreciate it a little bit more. To me, it's another C. Paper Mario, ooh, the black sheep in the family, man. It is the black sheep for a reason. This stickers idea changed the battle mechanics for the don't play this game, I don't want to talk about it. It's not bad, it's not terrible. You know what, I'm gonna give it a break, I'm gonna give it a C. It's a Mario game, it's Mario, we all love him no matter what. But yeah, this is the worst Paper Mario game. Persona Q 1 and 2, dungeon crawlers in first person, crossovers between Persona 3 and 4, the first one, and Persona 3, 4, and 5, the second one. I thought I had loved this game. I did finish the first one, and it's one of the very few turn-based dungeon crawlers I've ever finished in my entire life. The second one, I tried to give it a try. My English is broken today, guys. Anyway, I tried to give it a chance. I put like 12 hours into it, and I gave up. I abandoned it. Not because it's a bad game. They're actually pretty good games, but they're dungeon crawlers in first person, not my type of jam. I just don't really enjoy playing those games as much as I did back in the day. Both belong on the B, actually. If you like Persona and you like dungeon crawlers in first person, these are highly recommended. There's this game called Pigdune 2. Apparently it's another dungeon crawler in first person with sexy girls and whatnot, generic party members, and you take pictures to attack your... It's a D. It's digital only, by the way. I don't give a rat's ass about that game. Alright, Pokemon, my favorite JRPG series of all time. All of them belong to the C. There's a bunch of them, you know. There's Alpha and Omega. Is it that, or Alpha and Sapphire? Or I don't even know their names. Moon and whatever. X and Y. And the majority of our ports and Rim is Ultra Sun, and Jesus Christ, man. Pokemon, I know you guys, some of you are die-hard fans, I'm not, so all of these belong in the C. Remember, just because I'm not a fan of Pokemon, I don't really care about Pokemon. Yeah, don't take offense. Here's another one. They come in pairs, you know that. And then there's the Mystery Dungeon series, here's X and Y. Anyway, the Mystery Dungeon series, they're okay. I prefer these games a little bit more, but like I said, you know, eventually they get boring. And you really need to like Pokemon and roguelike dungeon crawlers like this. They're okay, not for me, also on the C. Yeah, but they're fun. Project Cross Zone 1 and 2, man. Some of my all-time favorite JRPGs on 3DS. Massive crossovers between several series by Capcom, Namco. Atlus should be in there, that'll be awesome for Project Cross Zone 3. Nintendo, Sega, man, there's a lot in there. And there's a lot of characters, and there's a lot of, you know, JRPG characters in there. Strategy RPGs, I've covered these games to death, and, man, let's move on. These two guys go on the S for me. My god, you know, I love them. Freaking love them. Can't wait for Project Cross Zone 3. Make it happen, Monolith Soft. Jesus, and then there's another masterpiece right here, an enhanced port, remaster of Radiant Historia. I freaking loved the original version on the DS. I love this remaster. Amazing game with extra content and all that jazz. This is one of the absolute best JRPGs on the 3DS. This also belongs on the S. Alright, what else is there? Okay, here's an interesting game. This is Popolo Croy. Remember Popolo Croy is a series that came out on the computer systems, I think, on the PS1. I think they were on the PS1, the original games, never came out of Japan. And then they made a compilation of them all, I think, and put it on the PSP. Turn-based RPG and whatnot. Good game. But this is Return to Popolo Croy. It's a sequel, however, it's actually a hybrid with Harvest Moon. There's a farming simulation and all that stuff. The farming sim kinda killed it for me. But I think if I sit down and really give this game a chance, I can get into it. The battle mechanics are still the same, you know, you're moving kind of like in grids. It's not a strategy RPG, the grids, it's just a turn-based RPG on grids like other JRPGs before, like Rhapsody, Kudelka, the Legend of Heroes series. And it's still fun, the battle system is the one thing that I like the most. But yes, you do need to play the one on the PSP first to understand this one. Sorry guys, but anyway, yeah, this is a fun game, I'm gonna give it a B. Room Factory 4, you guys know me, not a fan, and but this I just don't care, you know, I don't care about this game. Maybe someday I'll give the series a chance and become a fan, someday. For now, it's still a C. I don't know, maybe I'll regret it one day, and it'll be a B or an A, right? Anyway, Shin Megami Tensei 4 and Apocalypse, right? These two games are deeply connected. You kind of do need to play the 4 before Apocalypse, because Apocalypse is a direct sequel to the neutral ending, I think, of 4. And 4 is a game that back in the day a lot of people criticized it, but nowadays everybody praises it. Shin Megami Tensei is kind of like Star Ocean. One game comes out, half the world trashes the game, the next one comes out, and suddenly that previous game is a masterpiece. Anyway, not to me, guys. This is a game that forces you at the beginning to do a lot of side quests, and that killed it for me. The story, untouchable, music, untouchable, characters, untouchable, but that little part right there impeded me to go on. Still, it's a great game. I'm gonna give it a B. Apocalypse, however, is a masterpiece. You guys don't need me to talk about this game. Cover this game to death. More Shin Megami Tensei games. We got Strange Journey, which is a port, a remaster of the original game that came out on the Nintendo DS. And this is the best version to play. Additional content, one additional character that changes and spices things up. Really interesting. Amazing story, amazing writing in this game. This is a game for adults. It's not about the average high school character, you know, like most Shin Megami Tensei games. No, this is about a professional and mature adult team of soldiers and researchers going to the Antarctica. And I'll leave it at that. There's a lot of mysteries in there. But the downfall of this game is that it's a dungeon crawling first person. It's one of those where labyrinths are stupidly long. I made it far in this game, I never finished it because, oh my god, it just destroyed me. Not with the difficulty, don't worry, it's not about the difficulty. In fact, there's an easy mode. But it's just traversing these labyrinths full of traps and puzzles, and it's just, man, it wore me out. Maybe someday, but for now, it stays on the B. And Soul Hackers is a remake on, well, I'm not sure if it's a remake or a remaster. I think it's also a remaster of a game that originally came out on the Sega Saturn only in Japan, your favorite country, guys. Soul Hackers, you already know this game because the sequel came out last year, unrelated story-wise. This is a fantastic game, again, one of the very, very, very few dungeon crawlers in first person I've finished. Amazing game, amazing story, amazing everything. It's no masterpiece because it's a dungeon crawler, and I'm kind of not a fan of those, but still I'm gonna give this one an A. You know, all hail the goddess and the Misa, amazing character. Moving on to Stella Glow. Stella Glow is another hidden gem, overlooked gem. It's a strategy RPG. It's kind of silly, and it looks kind of silly because the characters are chibi and cute and whatever, and it's all about the sexy witches that you gotta find to prevent another evil witch from finding them and whatnot. Your main characters, you know, childhood friends, become soldiers of the Empire, I think, and all shit goes downhill from there. I'm just kidding. It's a good story, but yeah, it's kind of generic, to be honest. And the battle system is simple yet effective, enjoyable. This is a great strategy RPG for beginners, you know. It doesn't get hard until the end of the game. It's okay, doesn't hold your hand, it's balanced, and there's a lot of, you know, well, dating. You can date your friends or the girls. It's another harem, of course. Of course, it had to be one. And yeah, it's kind of fun, you know. It's no visual novel, don't worry. This is recommended. I'm gonna give it a B. It's actually a pretty fun game. Tales of the Abyss needs no introduction. This is the port to the 3DS. I'd rather stick to the PS2 version, but this version is just as good. No problems here. Recommended. Tales of the Abyss, amazing game. It's an A, solid A. The Alliance Alive is another solid A. I know the remaster that came out on Switch, PS4, and Steam is the preferred version to play, but this is the one that I actually played and finished for the first time, and I had a blast. It's kind of a slow burn. At the beginning, you won't be that impressed, but as the time progresses, you know, as you move on with the game, you know, you'll fall in love with it. This is a solid A. I recommended this game to death in this channel. All right, the Denpa Man. Weird ass titles that were released on the 3DS, man. I have no freaking idea what these games are about. I have no freaking idea. I never made them work on my 3DS. I downloaded the first one, never worked. Downloaded another ROM, didn't work. I don't know, I didn't play these games. From what I saw on YouTube and the footage you're seeing right now, they are RPGs. You create a bunch of generic characters and have them go to missions to fight in turn-based battles, I think. And you go around town. I think you build a town or something. And there's three of these games. Nobody knows them. These are among the most obscure in the entire 3DS library. Digital only, guys. No physical release. So if you're interested in these games, buy them or download a ROM if you can make it work on your 3DS. Hopefully it will. Man, give them a try and tell me all about it. Tell me if they're any good. Because I don't know, from what I can tell, they look kind of generic. Just because I don't know and I don't know anything about them, the entire trilogy is going to the C tier. Unchained Blades is one of the worst JRPGs on the 3DS and on the PSP. I thought it was a hidden gem because it starts off really interesting. But then it becomes another dungeon crawler in first person. Basically, I don't even remember the plot because this is such a forgettable game. The protagonist, I think, is some kind of god something like that, and then he gets punished and sent to Earth, and he tries to gain his powers back, and there's some comedy in there, some interesting stuff in there, and you actually switch between this guy and another protagonist, a female protagonist, until the party merges. But there's a twist to the battle mechanics. It's a turn-based RPG. But the whole point of the battle is to add these creatures, these summoned creatures that can aid you in battle. You don't control them, but they actually they perform some kind of skills. But to get them, it's a pain in the ass, and they are required to progress with the story. 3 hours later, I quit on this game, and man, it's not bad, it's not terrible. Like I mentioned at the beginning, there's not a single game in the 3DS, a single JRPG here that it's actually an E. A terrible, absolute garbage? No, but this is not recommended, guys. If you want to give it a try, be my guest. No physical version, digital only, and I recommend going for the PSP version instead. Yeah, this is a D. And finally, we got the Yokai Watch series. Sorry guys, just like with Pokemon, I'm not a fan. I did try the first one a lot. I put some hours into it because I found it more interesting than Pokemon. But eventually, I think I put like 4 hours into it and I was bored. It's not for me, they're games for kids. And if you are not a fan of Pokemon, you probably won't enjoy these games. They're kind of different though. Pokemon's about training your monsters and entering tournaments and challenging people, right? And these games are more like story-driven, in which you kind of have to hunt ghosts, I think, and then add them to your party and whatnot. So, not to shit on Pokemon, don't worry, I respect Pokemon a lot, but I found these games and their ideas way more interesting. Still, I just couldn't get into a single one of them. So there's the trilogy, 1, 2, and 3, and they will go on the C, because like I said, not for me. Don't get offended. And then there's one more game. It got 2 different releases, like black and white, like Pokemon, right? And these are action RPGs, they're beat 'em ups, and guess what? They're more fun, in my opinion, than the turn-based RPGs of Yokai Watch. But still, once again, I think they're spin-offs, alright? And crossovers across the trilogy on the 3DS. And they're freaking expensive, by the way, both versions. And I don't know, man, it's not for me, so I'm gonna put them on the C as well. But they're fun games, they're cool beat-em-ups. Beat-em-up action RPGs, whatever you want to call them. And we're done! We're done! That is my ranking on the 3DS. I'm pretty picky in my tier lists, which is why the C tier is always the one with most games, or the B. But we got a lot of great JRPGs on the S and on the A. Devil Survivor 1 and 2, Project Croissant 1 and 2, Radiant Historia, Apocalypse. Yeah, it looks like Atlus won the day. It's the governor of the 3DS when it comes to JRPGs. Alright guys, what do you think? Leave a comment, and thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Long live the 3DS. Rest in peace, the digital eShop. But I think the physical media will go on. And the prices are going to go up pretty soon. Yeah. See you next time.